Hey folks. Honestly, never thought I'd be the kind of guy to put something like this out there, but life's full of surprises, right? Buckle up, this one's a doozy. Name's Dwight. I was married to a woman named Lucy for 6 years. Now, I am not gonna stand here and pretend we had the perfect marriage, far from it. But we had something that worked, or at least, I thought we did. A nice house, decent jobs, some laughs here and there. Seemed stable enough. But about a month ago, things started to feel off. Lucy's phone suddenly became her new best friend. She carried it around like it was glued to her hand. And the way she'd light up looking at that screen, it was like she just found out she won the lottery or something. She got real sneaky, too. Every time I walked into a room, she'd tuck her phone away like she was guarding classified government secrets. Then came the late nights. She started saying she had to stay at work longer than usual. But come on, in all the time I'd known her, the only time she ever stayed up late was to binge-watch sitcoms on Netflix. Suddenly she was all about those urgent deadlines and team meetings. Right. Now, I played dumb. I smiled, nodded, kept the peace. Deep down, though, my gut was screaming at me. Something wasn't right. I kept pushing that feeling aside because, honestly, I did not want to face what I was starting to suspect. Who would? Then one evening, everything started to click. I was packing up for a short work trip, just an overnight thing a couple hours away. We were sitting at dinner, chatting like normal, but Lucy was acting weird. A little too cheerful. It was like she could not wait for me to leave. That is when it hit me. Her energy wasn't sadness about being alone, it was excitement. Like she was waiting for a delivery. Except this package was me leaving the house. Later that night, I caught her whispering on the phone. Thought she was being sneaky, but she never was very good at hiding things. She was in the hallway, talking all quiet like a teenager planning a secret party. I caught bits and pieces, things like, "Tomorrow night is perfect. He'll be out of town, and the real kicker, do not worry, we'll have the whole place to ourselves." Yeah. That one hit hard. I laid in bed next to her that night, staring at the ceiling while she slept like nothing was wrong. I was boiling inside, but I kept my mouth shut. No way was I going to lose my cool and give her a chance to cover her tracks. I wanted to catch her red-handed. I needed her to feel the full weight of it. So, I made up my mind. I was not going on that business trip after all. The next morning, I called my boss and said I needed a couple days off for personal reasons. Lucky for me, he is a good guy and gave me the time without asking too many questions. First stop after that? The electronics store. I dropped more money than I care to admit on surveillance gear. Hidden cameras, microphones, the works. If she was planning to turn our home into her little love nest, I was going to have a front row seat. While she was at work, I got to setting everything up. I had seen enough spy flicks to know where to hide the good stuff: living room, kitchen, bedroom, even the bathroom. Anywhere she might get cozy with her mystery man, I had it covered. But just watching wasn't enough. I wanted to throw a wrench into her plans. So, I got creative. See, we had dinner plans the night before I was supposed to leave. I made sure I cooked that meal myself and added a little something special, a couple of extra strong laxatives right into her food. Yeah, I know it was petty. But when your wife's plotting to betray you in your own house? Petty goes out the window. That evening, we sat down to eat. She was glowing like a kid on Christmas morning. She probably thought she was being so clever, smiling and chatting like everything was normal, knowing full well she had something else planned once I was gone. I just smiled back, played along, and watched her dig in. After dinner, I kissed her on the cheek, grabbed my suitcase, and told her I'd be back the following night. She waved me off like she was the perfect little wife. I walked out the door and drove straight to a hotel about 10 minutes away. I set up my laptop, connected to the camera feeds, and waited. Let me tell you, watching your wife clean the house for another man is a special kind of pain. She was fluffing pillows, lighting candles, putting on a dress I had never seen before. She looked giddy. And then the doorbell rang. There she was, my wife, practically skipping to the front door. She gave herself one last look in the mirror, fluffed her hair, straightened her dress, and opened the door with the biggest grin on her face. And who was standing there? Some guy who looked like he just clocked out from janitor duty at a rundown motel. Man, I almost laughed out loud when I saw him. Turns out, his name was Troy. Of course it was. Looked like a walking cliché, balding, rocking a solid beer belly, and carrying himself like he hadn't stepped inside a gym since high school. This was the guy Lucy was willing to gamble everything for? Unbelievable. I leaned back in my hotel chair, popped open a cold beer, and got ready for the train wreck that was about to unfold. Troy strutted in, grinning like he just won the jackpot, carrying a bottle of bargain bin wine like it was some romantic gesture. They sat down on the couch and started chatting, laughing nervously, fidgeting, like two awkward teenagers pretending this was something special. If I had not known the context, maybe it would have looked innocent. But knowing what I knew? It was enough to make my skin crawl. They poured the wine, made small talk, and I could see Lucy trying hard to keep her cool. But then I noticed something off. She started shifting in her seat. First a little. Then again. Then again. And that's when I knew my little addition to dinner was kicking in. She stood up, trying to play it off like she just needed a moment, and made a beeline for the bathroom. Troy, bless his clueless heart, just sat there sipping his wine, still thinking this was his big night. Now here's where it gets real good. I had installed a camera in the bathroom, tucked away, nothing invasive, just enough to catch what I needed to see. And sure enough, there she was, sitting on the toilet, face twisted in pure discomfort. It looked like her stomach had declared war on her. I'm talking full-blown internal disaster. And let me tell you, it was glorious. She tried to make it quick, but this wasn't one of those in-and-out situations. This was the kind of stomach trouble that grabs you by the throat and does not let go. Eventually, she came back out, looking pale and rattled, trying to pretend everything was fine. But I could see it in her eyes, she was spiraling. Troy scooted closer, trying to get romantic, probably thinking it was time to seal the deal. But just as his hand slid up her leg, boom. She was up again, racing back to the bathroom like her life depended on it. I just about spit my beer from laughing. By the time she came out again, the whole evening had fallen apart. Troy looked confused and annoyed, while Lucy looked like she had been through a war. They tried to recover, threw on a movie, maybe hoping to salvage what little chemistry they thought they had, but Lucy couldn't sit still for more than a few minutes before rushing off again. It was like watching a bad soap opera on fast forward. Troy started picking up on the fact that something was seriously wrong. He asked if she was okay. She gave him some half-baked excuse about having a bad lunch. Must have been something I ate, she said. Yeah, right. You did not have a salad, Lucy. By this point, the mood was officially dead. Troy was irritated. Lucy was flustered. And I was sitting there in my hotel room, living for every awkward, cringy second of it. They started arguing, Troy accusing her of being distant, Lucy lashing out and trying to keep it together while probably praying for the night to just end already. She stormed off to the bathroom one last time. That was it for Troy. He stood up, grabbed his coat, and walked out without saying a word. I'll be honest, I almost felt bad for the guy. Almost. Watching her stumble back into the living room, sitting alone and looking like her world just collapsed, brought me a kind of satisfaction I didn't even know I needed. She was probably wondering how everything went so wrong. Meanwhile, I was grinning like a fool, knowing full well that every ounce of that chaos was my doing. Yeah, it was petty. But after what she tried to pull? I figured I had earned a little revenge. I watched as she slumped down on the couch, looking completely drained, physically and emotionally. She pulled out her phone and fired off a few texts. Probably trying to explain herself to Troy, hoping to do damage control. But no replies came. Can't say I blamed him. If I were in his shoes, I'd have disappeared too. She looked like she was about to cry. And me? I felt nothing. Not sadness. Not guilt. Just smug. Watching her squirm, knowing she brought this on herself, was all the closure I needed for the night. Eventually, she tossed her phone down and just sat there, stewing in her own mess. Maybe she was mad at Troy, or herself, or the universe for ruining her big night. What she did not know was that the universe had a name, and it was Dwight. And buddy, I was only getting started. By the next morning, my mind was made up. There was no way I could keep living under the same roof with someone I knew had been sneaking around behind my back. So that afternoon, I walked back through our front door like I had just returned from my trip. Lucy lit up like everything was normal. She even asked how the trip went, wearing that same fake smile I was now sure she had been practicing for weeks. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "We need to talk." And just like that, the smile vanished. "I know what you've been doing, Lucy," I said. I could see it hit her. Her whole body went stiff, her face drained of color. That moment, that was the real payoff. Her eyes started darting around the room like she was searching for some emergency escape button. She opened her mouth, trying to come up with something, anything, to cover her tracks. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. But I had already heard enough. "Save it," I said, holding up my hand. "Just stop. I know everything." I laid it all out. The hidden cameras. The text messages. Her little plan to have Troy over the moment I was supposed to be out of town. "I saw it all, Lucy," I told her. She went completely pale, like every ounce of blood drained from her face. For a second, I thought she might actually faint. But then she flipped the script, out came the tears. Suddenly she was sobbing, trying to throw together some broken excuse. "Dwight, it's not what you think," she cried. "I was just lonely. We've been so distant lately. I made a mistake, but I swear, nothing happened. I didn't sleep with him. I promise you." I almost laughed in her face. "Yeah, nothing happened because you spent half the night glued to the toilet," I said, arms crossed, staring her down. "That wasn't an accident, by the way. I put laxatives in your dinner." Her jaw dropped. She looked at me like I had just confessed to a crime. Honestly, I kind of had, but I did not care. Figured if you were gonna disrespect me in my own home, the least I could do was make sure it wasn't a good time. She stood there stunned, her mouth moving but no words coming out. Just that fish out of water look. She tried to come closer, probably hoping she could tug on my arm or touch my hand like that would make me forget all of it. I took a step back. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice sharp. "I don't care what you feel. I don't care how sorry you are. You lied to me God knows for how long, and now it's done." She dropped onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. But I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness. Just cold clarity. "You've got until the end of the week to pack your things," I said flatly. "If you're still here after that, I'll toss your stuff out on the curb myself. And don't try to guilt-trip me or beg. I've already filed the divorce paperwork. It's over." Her eyes went wide. Panic set in. "Please, Dwight, please. I'll do anything," she whimpered. "I know I messed up. I know I was stupid. But we can fix this. We can still fix us." I shook my head. Too late. I turned around and walked out of the living room, leaving her sobbing behind me. I went straight into the bedroom, locked the door, and sat on the bed while the sounds of her crying echoed through the walls. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me. I wasn't going to let her turn this into some misunderstanding. It wasn't. It was betrayal, plain and simple. This wasn't just a rough patch. It wasn't something we'd work through. It was done. She knew it. I knew it. And soon, everybody else would know too. But what she did not know. I still had one more move to make. Now, I wish I could say I felt satisfied after that whole showdown, like I had gotten the closure I needed. But the truth? I was still angry. The kind of anger that sticks to your bones. The whole thing felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, and her tears didn't do a thing to soften it. While she cried herself into the couch cushions, I sat in the bedroom, staring at the ceiling, putting the last piece of my plan in place. See, I wasn't just going to let her walk away with a weak apology. She needed to understand what she had done. She needed to feel it. And Troy? Oh, he wasn't getting off the hook either. The next morning, I woke up early. Lucy hadn't even come near the bedroom all night. She had curled up in the guest room, probably sobbing herself to sleep. And I did not lose a second of rest. I got up, grabbed my phone, and started making some calls. First, to my lawyer. I wanted the divorce papers finalized and served before the week was out. Next, I dialed a number Lucy never expected me to call, Troy's wife. Yeah, that's right. OL Troy had a wife. Her name was Jessica. From what I gathered, she was completely in the dark about what her husband had been up to. Not for long. I found her number, took a deep breath, and called. The phone rang a few times before a bright, cheerful voice picked up. Hello, she said, totally unaware her whole world was about to shift. Hi, Jessica, I started, trying to keep my voice even. My name's Dwight. I'm Lucy's husband. There was a pause. I could tell she was trying to place the name. Oh. Dwight. Hi. Is everything okay? No, I said. I'm sorry to do this over the phone, but I thought you deserved to know. Your husband, Troy, has been seeing my wife. They planned to meet up at our place while I was out of town. I have proof, texts, emails, camera footage, the whole thing. The line went quiet. After a few seconds, she spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. Are you sure? Yeah, I replied, that old wave of anger swelling in my chest again. I wouldn't be calling if I wasn't. If you want, I can send you everything. After I hung up, I looked toward the guest room. Lucy was still in there, probably holding out hope that I might change my mind. Spoiler alert, I wasn't. Later that day, I met Jessica in person. We chose a small coffee shop not far from where she lived. I didn't know what to expect, but when she walked in, I was stunned. She was beautiful. Like, genuinely beautiful. The kind of woman you look at and wonder how any man could be stupid enough to mess that up. And Troy? Troy chose to throw that away, for Lucy. I mean, look, my wife wasn't unattractive. But compared to Jessica? It was like Troy traded in a brand new luxury car for a busted-up station wagon with a cracked windshield and a funny smell. And that's when I knew Troy had just as much to lose as Lucy did. And I was going to make sure he lost it all. When I handed Jessica the stack of proof I'd gathered, emails, screenshots, even a few short clips from the hidden cameras, I could see the life drain from her face. She looked absolutely crushed. For a second, I actually felt bad for being the one to hit her with the truth. But she had every right to know, and Troy? Well, he had this coming. We sat there for a while, picking through the mess together. She kept thanking me, even though she looked like her whole world had just crumbled. Her hands shook, and she kept mumbling things like, how could he do this to me, and I really thought we were happy. I gave her my number before I left and told her if she needed more proof or just someone to talk to, I'd be there. I wasn't trying to play the hero or anything. It just felt like, since we were both neck deep in this wreck of a situation, maybe we could at least help each other get through it. As I walked back to my car, it hit me Lucy's secret wasn't a secret anymore. Her affair was dead in the water, and her life, the one she'd built on lies, was about to fall apart. She was not just losing me. Troy was about to lose his wife too. And once that happened, everything they'd tried to hide was going to collapse like a house of cards. But I was not finished yet. After talking with Jessica, something shifted inside me. I felt this odd sense of peace. Like the ball was finally rolling, and it was only a matter of time before it all blew up in their faces. Lucy and Troy thought they were so slick, thought they could lie to us, play us both for fools. But now? Now the truth was out, and I could not wait to watch how they handled it. That night, when I got home, Lucy was sitting at the kitchen table. She looked like she had not slept a wink. Her eyes were puffy, and she had this pitiful look on her face, like she was holding on to the smallest bit of hope that maybe I would let this slide. That I might forgive her. I did not even bother with a long speech. "You've got 3 days," I said, dropping the divorce papers on the table like a brick. "I'll be staying at a friend's place until you're gone. If you're still here by the end of the week, I'll have the police come and escort you out." She stared at me, completely stunned. "Dwight, wait, please. Can we talk about this? I didn't actually sleep with him." I cut her off before she could go any further. "Do not. I do not care if you did or you didn't. You were planning to, and that's all I need to know. You crossed a line, Lucy. You betrayed me. There's no coming back from that." She started to scramble for excuses, trying to explain, trying to cry her way out of it like she always did. But I was done. Every word out of her mouth just sounded like more lies, more manipulation. I turned around and headed upstairs to pack a bag. I heard her sobbing downstairs, but I felt nothing. I had more important things to focus on now. Right before I walked out the door, I stopped and turned to her one last time. "Oh, by the way," I said, trying to keep my voice casual, "I met up with Troy's wife today." I showed her everything. The look on her face was unforgettable. It was like she had been punched in the stomach. Her skin went pale and her hands started to shake. "You what?" she stammered. "You told her?" "Yep," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "Turns out Troy was lying to her too. She knows everything now. I wouldn't be surprised if she's already calling a divorce lawyer." Lucy looked like she was about to collapse. "Dwight, no. Why would you do that? This was supposed to stay between us." I actually laughed at that. "Between us? Are you serious? You destroyed our marriage, Lucy. You do not get to control the fallout. Troy's wife deserved the truth just as much as I did." She stood up from the table, tears streaming down her face, looking more desperate than I had ever seen her. "But Dwight, I love you. I didn't mean for this to happen. I don't know what I was thinking. Can't we fix this?" I just shook my head. "No, Lucy. You weren't thinking about me at all. You were thinking about yourself. About Troy. You never stopped to think what this would do to me. Or to us. It's over. You made your choice. Now live with it." Then I walked out, leaving her standing there, broken and speechless. And maybe she really did think I would forgive her. That somehow I would let this all slide. But I couldn't. The trust was gone. And once trust is gone, there's no putting the pieces back together. On my way to my buddy Tom's place, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jessica. "I confronted Troy," she wrote. "He tried to lie at first, but once I showed him the proof, he cracked. Admitted to everything. I'm filing for divorce." I felt a grim kind of satisfaction wash over me. Lucy and Troy thought they could sneak around behind our backs and come out clean on the other side. But now their whole world was falling apart. And the best part? They had nobody to blame but themselves. The next few days were a blur. I crashed at Tom's place, who, by the way, was more than happy to offer a couch, a cold beer, and a solid good riddance speech. Turns out, he had never liked Lucy much but kept it to himself all these years. I was grateful for the support, even if it still felt unreal, me sleeping on a buddy's couch, while my soon-to-be ex-wife sat at home, watching the mess she made come back to bite her. Lucy did what I expected she'd do. She went into full panic mode. Suddenly, I was getting flooded with text messages, phone calls, voicemails, all repeating the same tired script. "It was a mistake, Dwight. I'll do anything to make it right. Please don't give up on us." Like I was the one tossing our marriage in the trash. But she was the one who wrecked it, not me. She crossed that line the moment she decided sneaking around behind my back was worth the risk. I didn't answer a single message. I was done with her. The only words I had left for Lucy would come out in court. Meanwhile, things on Troy's side were going up in flames too. Jessica, his wife, did not waste any time. Within 2 days, Troy had divorce papers shoved in his face and was kicked out of the house. Word was, he tried the same sob story Lucy had hit me with: apologies, promises, the works, but Jessica? She was too smart for that. Strong, too. She knew her worth, and she was not about to play the fool. Jessica and I kept in touch during all of this. We weren't exactly close or anything, but there was this unspoken understanding between us. We had both been dragged through the same kind of betrayal, and it helped knowing someone else out there actually understood what I was feeling. We'd exchange texts now and then, give each other updates, compare notes on how fast everything was unraveling. There was something oddly comforting about that. Then came Friday. I got a message from Lucy: "Dwight, I'm coming to get my stuff. Please be there. I want to talk." I rolled my eyes. Talk? About what? There was nothing left to say. Still, I figured it was time to get this over with. I told her I'd meet her at the house. Truth was, I didn't trust her to go through our things without me there. After everything she'd done, I wasn't about to leave her alone in the place we used to call home. When I pulled into the driveway that afternoon, she was already there, sitting in her car. She looked like hell, hair a mess, face pale, eyes swollen like she hadn't slept in days. For half a second, I felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I remembered everything, and that pity vanished real quick. She'd made her choices. Now she had to live with them. I got out, crossed my arms, and leaned against the porch railing. Didn't even bother saying hello. "You've got until tomorrow to pack up and go," I said, flat and cold. She looked up at me with those red-rimmed eyes. "Dwight, please. Can we at least talk?" I shook my head. "Talk about what, Lucy? You cheated. You lied. You destroyed our marriage. What else is there to say?" She opened her mouth like she had something to add, but then closed it again, realizing that nothing she said could change my mind. Her voice dropped to a whisper, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. "I still love you." I let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Yeah, well, I used to love you too. But that was before you decided Troy was worth more than everything we built together. Now, I don't feel a damn thing." Her face crumbled. For a second, I thought she might try to beg again, but instead, she just nodded, like she finally accepted it was over. "Fine," she said quietly. "I'll pack my things." I followed her inside and stood there in the living room while she moved around, tossing clothes and personal stuff into boxes like a ghost of the woman I once knew. Her movements were slow, sluggish, like her body was on autopilot, but her mind was somewhere else. I wanted to feel bad. I really did. But I just couldn't. Not after everything she put me through. It took a couple of hours, but eventually she was done. The house felt different. Lighter, somehow. Like I could finally breathe again now that her presence was on its way out the door. She dragged her last bag out to the car, and I walked with her to the front door. "Goodbye, Lucy," I said, voice flat as a stone. No emotion. Just the end. She looked back at me, eyes full of regret. "Goodbye, Dwight," she whispered. Then she got in her car and drove off. I stood there on the porch, watching the taillights disappear down the street. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. But just when I thought the storm had passed, life tossed one more curveball my way. After Lucy's car disappeared, I just stood there for a bit, staring at the quiet road. I felt this mix of relief and exhaustion, like my body was finally letting go of all the tension it had been holding on to. I figured that was the end of it. Time to start fresh. I went back inside, planning to crash on the couch and enjoy the silence of a house no longer haunted by lies. But as I stepped into the living room, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica: "We need to talk. Call me when you can." I raised an eyebrow. Jessica and I had been in touch, but this message felt different. Urgent. I did not waste time. I hit her number and waited as it rang. "Hey," I said. "Everything okay?" Her voice came through shaky, like she was trying not to cry. "Dwight. I just found something out about Troy. Something you need to hear." My stomach dropped. I thought I had already hit rock bottom with all of this. "What now?" I asked, bracing myself. There was a pause. Then she said it. Troy wasn't just seeing Lucy. She wasn't the only one, Jessica said quietly. Troy was seeing other women too. A lot of them. I found messages, emails, it wasn't just your wife. My jaw clenched. I could feel my pulse rising. "You're telling me Lucy wasn't even his only affair?" "Not even close," Jessica replied, her voice heavy with anger and heartbreak. "From what I've pieced together, Troy's been cheating on me with multiple women. Lucy was just one name on a long list. I thought you should hear it from me." I sat there in stunned silence. It was like someone had just knocked the wind out of me. Lucy hadn't fallen in love with some great guy or gotten caught up in a whirlwind romance. No, she had thrown away our marriage for a guy who was out there collecting women like trophies, like she was just another notch on his belt. And suddenly, the rage came back, hotter than ever. I thought I had already burned through all my anger, but no, this lit a new fire. Lucy had gambled everything we had on that guy. That guy. A serial cheater who did not even value her. It was almost laughable, if it wasn't so pathetic. "Thanks for telling me," I finally said, my voice low. I was still trying to wrap my head around it all. I guess that just proves they both got exactly what they deserved. Jessica let out a sigh. "Yeah. It's been a rough few days. I am going through with the divorce, of course, but it all just feels unreal, like I woke up in someone else's nightmare. I can't believe this is my life now." I nodded, even though she could not see it. "I get it. Believe me, I do. But you're doing the right thing. We both are. We're better off without people who treat us like that." She went quiet for a moment, then said, "You're right. It's just hard to see that sometimes, when the hurt's still fresh." "Yeah," I said. "But we'll get through it. They're the ones who are gonna have to live with what they did." We stayed on the phone for a while longer, swapping stories and shaking our heads over how two people could destroy not one, but two marriages, for something so meaningless. It was like watching a train wreck, except we were the ones standing in the wreckage, trying to make sense of it all. The whole thing would have been ridiculous if it didn't hurt so damn much. After we hung up, I sat there staring at my phone. Lucy still didn't know. She had no idea that Troy had been cheating on her too. She wasn't special to him, just another name in his inbox. A part of me wanted to tell her. I wanted to throw it in her face and let her feel that sting of betrayal. Let her see just how foolish she'd been. But another part of me? I just didn't care anymore. She wasn't my responsibility. Not anymore. The days passed slowly after that, but I started settling into a new routine. The house was quieter now, tidier too, and free from all that heavy, invisible tension that had been hanging in the air for months. Lucy sent a few more texts, pleading, begging for another chance, but I ignored them. That chapter of my life was over. I had finally made peace with it. And then, one evening, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, there was Jessica, standing there on my porch. She looked tired, worn out, like she hadn't slept much either, but there was something familiar in her expression. It mirrored how I felt inside. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," I replied, stepping aside to let her in. We sat in the living room and just talked. Not about Troy. Not about Lucy. Not even about the cheating. Just life. What came next? It was strange, really, sitting there with someone who had been through the same mess as me, someone who knew exactly what betrayal felt like. And even though she was still a bit of a stranger, it felt natural. Easy. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. After a while, Jessica gave me a small, tired smile. It wasn't forced. It was real. You know, she said, I think we're gonna be okay. Not right away, but someday. I nodded. Yeah. We will. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I actually believed that. We sat there in silence for a bit, but it was a peaceful kind of silence. And I started to realize something important. Betrayal can break you. It can rip your heart out and leave your world in pieces. But it does not have to be the end of your story. You can rebuild. You can heal. And if you're lucky, you might even find a little light in all that darkness. Lucy and Troy? They were just chapters. Painful ones, sure. But they're behind us now.